We've all seen the commercials. A happy couple gets the keys to their first home, a golden retriever magically appears on the lawn, and everything is bathed in a warm, fuzzy glow. The American dream, they call it, the cornerstone of financial security. We're told from a very young age that buying a house is the single smartest thing you can do with your money. It's not just a place to live, it's an investment, a golden ticket to future wealth. It's the responsible, adult thing to do, a step up the ladder of life that separates the serious people from those still eating cereal for dinner. But, and you knew there was a but, didn't you? What if that deeply ingrained belief is, to put it mildly, a bit of a scam? What if the whole idea of your primary residence being a top-tier investment is a well-marketed myth, like the idea that we only use 10% of our brains, or that ostriches bury their heads in the sand? They don't, by the way, they just lie down when they're tired, which, frankly, is far more relatable. The truth is, when you look closely at the numbers, the dream of homeownership can quickly start to resemble a financial nightmare you can't wake up from. The problem starts with treating your home like a stock in your portfolio. A stock doesn't need a new roof when it rains. A stock doesn't demand you pay it thousands of dollars in taxes every single year just for the privilege of owning it. A stock doesn't get termites. Your house, on the other hand, does all of that and more. It is an expensive, high-maintenance asset that you also happen to sleep in, and while it provides shelter, which is obviously important, confusing that basic need with a brilliant investment strategy is where things get very, very messy. So let's take a closer look, shall we? Let's peel back the layers of fresh paint and new siding to see what's really going on underneath. We're going to examine the costs, the slow growth, and the risks that nobody puts in the glossy real estate brochures. Because while owning a home can be a wonderful thing for many reasons, automatically assuming it's your best path to getting rich is a surefire way to end up with a lot less money than you planned. It's time to question the dream, because sometimes the dream is just trying to sell you something very, very expensive. Let's talk about costs, not the big scary number on the sale price. We all know about that one. I'm talking about the hidden costs. The financial goblins that live in your walls and under your floorboards, waiting to jump out and drain your bank account. First, there are property taxes. This is money you have to pay every single year, forever, just for the right to own your patch of dirt. It never stops. And guess what? It often goes up. So that fixed mortgage payment you're so proud of isn't really fixed at all when you factor in the ever-increasing tax bill. Then there's maintenance. Oh, the glorious, never-ending parade of maintenance. Your water heater will decide to die on the coldest day of the year. Your air conditioner will give up the ghost during a record-breaking heat wave. Your roof will spring a leak. These aren't if scenarios, they are when scenarios. Experts say you should budget at least 1% of your home's value for maintenance each year. For a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 a year, or over $330 a month, just for things to break. That money doesn't add a single dollar of value. It just keeps the house from falling apart. And don't forget insurance. You need homeowners insurance, which is another bill that shows up with staggering regularity. It protects you from disasters, which is good, but it's yet another expense that renters simply don't have to worry about on the same scale. Plus, if you want to make any changes, like adding a deck or renovating a bathroom, that costs thousands more. Suddenly, your investment is demanding more money from you every month than a needy relative who has a really great business idea they need you to fund. When you add it all up, the mortgage interest, the property taxes, the insurance, and the constant repairs, the amount of money you pour into a house is staggering. A renter, by comparison, pays their rent and that's it. If the dishwasher breaks, they call the landlord. If the roof leaks, they call the landlord. The homeowner gets to call a very expensive repair person, then sits and cries into their checkbook. This isn't an investment. For many, it's a second unpaid job that you have to pay for. Now, for the main event. Proponents of homeownership will say, sure, it costs money, but it's worth it because the value goes up. And they're not entirely wrong. Home prices do tend to rise over time. The key phrase there is over time, and more importantly, by how much. Historically, after you adjust for inflation, home prices in the United States have only appreciated by a tiny amount each year, often less than 1%. Yes, you read that right. Your so-called brilliant investment might not even be beating the rising cost of living. Let's compare this to another, far more boring investment, the stock market. A simple, low-cost index fund that tracks the S&P 500, for example, has historically returned an average of about 7 to 10% per year over the long run. The difference is massive. A house is a single, non-liquid asset in one location. The stock market is a diversified collection of hundreds of the world's most successful companies. One is putting all your eggs in a very fragile, very expensive basket. The other is spreading them out. Consider a simple example. Let's say you buy a $400,000 house. Over 30 years, after all the costs, maybe it's worth $600,000 in today's money. That feels like a win. But now consider a renter. Let's say they pay less per month to rent than the total cost of owning that house. They take the difference, say $500 a month, and invest it in a simple index fund. After 30 years, with average market returns, that renter could have over $500,000 saved up, and they never had to fix a toilet once. This isn't to say houses never make money. Of course, some people get lucky. They buy in a hot market at the right time and sell at the peak. But that's not investing. That's speculation. It's gambling. For the average person, over the average 30-year period, a house is what's known as a forced savings account, but it's a pretty terrible one. You'd be far better off taking the money you would have spent on property taxes, repairs, and extra interest and just investing it. It's less glamorous, but far more effective. Finally, let's talk about risk, the one thing real estate agents conveniently forget to mention while they're showing you the lovely granite countertops. What happens if you need to sell your house during a bad market? We all saw what happened in 2008. People who bought homes at the peak of the market suddenly found their properties were worth less than their mortgages. They were underwater, trapped in a home they couldn't afford and couldn't sell without taking a massive financial loss. A house is not a liquid asset. You can't sell it in 5 minutes like a stock. This lack of flexibility is a huge, underrated downside. What if you get a job offer in another city? A renter can just pack up and go when their lease is up. A homeowner has to go through the lengthy, stressful, and expensive process of selling their house. This can take months, even in a good market. In a bad one, you might be stuck for years, tethered to a property that is holding your life and your finances hostage. That's not freedom. That's a very pretty prison with a 2-car garage. The point of all this is not to say that owning a home is always a bad idea. It isn't. If you want stability, if you want to paint your walls a ridiculous color without asking permission, if you want a place for your kids and that golden retriever to grow up, then buying a house can be a wonderful personal decision. It provides intangible benefits that you can't put a price tag on. The mistake is confusing those personal benefits with a surefire financial strategy. They are two very different things. So, the next time someone tells you that buying a house is the best investment you can ever make, you should be skeptical. It can be a decent way to build some equity, but it is rarely the best path to building real wealth. For that, disciplined saving and investing in diversified, low-cost funds will almost always win in the long run. A home is a place to live. It's shelter. It's a consumption good, like a car or a television, albeit a very, very expensive one. And thinking of it as anything more is a great way to let the American dream empty your pockets.